The nation falls silent on Armistice Day. New details of the tram crash that claimed 7 lives. And a second night of anti-Trump protests. You're watching 5 News Tonight. Two-minute silence across the country to remember those who lost their lives in war. 3 more victims of the Croydon tram crash are named. All of them were parents. And after another night of violent protests in the United States, Donald Trump causes controversy with his response. Also tonight, we're discussing women in the White House. Michelle will soon make way for Melania. We'll be asking what kind of First Lady Mrs. Trump will be. And a true legend. We'll be looking at the legacy of Leonard Cohen after his death at the age of 82. Good evening and welcome to 5 News Tonight. I'm Matt Barbett. It is a silence that means so much to so many. At 11 o'clock this morning in towns and cities across the country, people paused to remember the servicemen and women who've been killed in battle. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month marks the moment when the guns fell silent at the end of World War I. One special commemoration came at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire today, where Prince Harry joined veterans to lay a wreath and to read a poem. Peter Lane was there.
Led by a prince, a nation paused to remember. The wreath placed by Prince Harry at the National Armed Forces Memorial had a handwritten message for those who have gone before and those who will follow in the future. The last post, the sound of Armistice Day, echoed here and at so many places across the UK, followed by a silence that said so much. And then a poem read by the Prince, written back in 1914, at the beginning of the First World War.
If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England.
1953.
1953's over here.
Every veteran has a story to tell. Back in 1953, Alan Winsper helped rescue a group of airmen from a burning plane, but couldn't get to one of them. Now, decades later, his family have helped him trace the dead man's name, and today, Alan found it, inscribed among the thousands that are listed here. Derek Burtonshaw.
It's been in my mind, and I just got to find the man. Like saying sorry, we didn't do it, we didn't get you out. I feel so awful that we got all the others out and we couldn't get at that man. And he must have suffered.
You did your absolute best.
Yeah, we did our best. We got a commendation from our commanding officer on our quick and prompt action, saving so many lives. But we couldn't get that one man. And that's always played on my life, on my mind.
Some veterans were introduced to the Prince today, Harry taking time to meet, greet and put them at ease.
How old are you now?
98.
98? Oh. I bet you could run the 100 metres faster than me.
And veterans of conflicts past joined service personnel from today's armed forces for an Armistice Day parade, music filling the air after the silence of remembrance. Peter Lane, 5 News.
Earlier, I spoke to 2 men who know just how important this weekend's commemorations really are. Corporal Simon Brown was left almost completely blind after being shot by a sniper in Iraq in 2006. Corporal Warren Ward was with him and helped save his life. A few months later, though, he was also badly wounded in a mortar attack and was told he would never walk again. Well, he is now walking, and on Sunday both men will march together for the first time since, when they joined veterans at the Cenotaph. They came in to see me earlier on and told me more about what happened to them when they were fighting.
December the 6th, 2006, I was the commander of a recovery mission. We went in under heavy fire to recover a vehicle with 6 comrades on board. We successfully rescued the vehicle and the people. Unfortunately, on the extraction, because of the situation we was in, I had to clear the way by looking out the turret, and a sniper sort of spotted me. The bullet went in my left cheek, came out my right cheek, and as you can imagine, ruined my Wednesday morning. But I was very lucky the bullet didn't knock me out. I was able to do my own first aid for 20-25 minutes till Wardy got me to the medical facilities at Basra Palace. And at that point, I was put into a drug-induced coma and woke up in Birmingham Christmas Eve 2006 to the news that I'd lost my left eye totally, and there was very little hope of recovering much sight in my right eye. But fortunately, I retained 20% in my right eye, which is very usable.
And you were lucky in a way that this man next to you was there, because he was key, as were your other comrades, in saving your life and getting you out of there. Warren, though, you yourself weren't immune to the dangers of Iraq, because 5 months later you were injured as well.
Yes, I was. I was involved in a mortar attack. A mortar landed a couple of foot away from me, and I was unlucky enough to take some. Well, I tried to catch it, but unlucky I couldn't. But I had shrapnel in my C1, C2, which entered the spinal cord. I also had 2 punctured lungs. My right humerus was, the right bone in the humerus was all smashed up and hanging off. I had brain damage to the left humerus, yeah.
In some ways, you're both lucky to be alive, because I know you both lost comrades in Iraq. And we're obviously sitting here today on Armistice Day, and we can see, Simon, the injuries you're still having to deal with. In fact, we can, if you look at camera 1 there, we can see fairly closely that you, in your left eye, your glass eye, you've got the Blind Veterans UK logo on there, which is absolutely phenomenal. I'm sure people ask you about that all the time. But on a day like today, how does it change how you think about those who've fallen compared to before you fought and got injured and lost comrades?
Well, in service, obviously, it's a very busy time for us, but there's a lot of work involved. But doing it as a civilian, it's very different, because it's a time for us to actually have a reunion, catching up with old friends, old colleagues, telling stories. And I think when we get together, the poppies have all got names and faces for us. But when we get together, we don't get upset in the sense that we miss them and we remember, absent friends, but we remember the good times about them, why they were our friends and the best parts about them. And that's why sometimes you'll see the veterans smiling and sort of having a joke with each other, because it'll be like, do you remember so-and-so? Do you remember when he did that? And it's just that glory of remembering their life, not just remembering their death.
Because when we talk about remembrance, Warren, plenty of people are solemn about it, and of course they're going to be, because there is some sadness involved, but you try and think about the better times, the men you lived with, rather than the way they died.
Yes. Well, as Simon says, before I lost any close friends, I did used to, well, I still do respect world wars, but it means a hell of a lot more nowadays, because it's, as Simon says, we can put faces and names to poppies we lost, because on that one tour, there was nine people what I personally knew died, and a hell of a lot more injured. And I'd rather celebrate someone's life instead of being miserable and morbid, because like me and Simon, we've got a really good bond, and we can laugh and joke at each other the way, because we do take the mickey out of each other sometimes, because he says certain stuff to me and I say it back, and it's just banter between us. But if anyone else heard us say it, I think they might be offensive by it.
Well, the fact that you tried to catch the mortar and throw it back, and the fact that it just ruined your morning, I mean, it shows us how you can have a sense of humour in the face of such adversity. What is going to be poignant, though, this weekend is the two of you, Simon, are going to be marching together for the first time on Remembrance Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, you look, 10 years ago, I got shot in the head, and Warren was told he'd never walk again. So the odds that either of us could be on this parade, standing tall in 10 years' time were low. The fact that we're marching together, it is a very poignant sort of reminder to us 10 years on that we've come so far in such a relatively short time. Yeah. And like I say, it's going to be a very, very proud moment for the both of us.
Now, you're marching together for the first time on Sunday, Warren, which, you think it might have happened sooner because you're great mates, but of course you're injured. But this has been brought about by Blind Veterans UK.
Yes, it has, and I'm really grateful, and I'm so proud to march alongside the blind veterans, not only with them and remember, but with me good friend Simon, and we just got a bond between us, haven't we?
Yeah.
We've got the common bond, and then it's made stronger with what we've been through together.
It's undeniable. I think we can all see it, and really appreciate you both coming in to talk about it today. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, in Croydon, in South London, people were given more time to pause today so they could commemorate the victims of Wednesday's tram crash. More of their names are now beginning to emerge, while investigators are looking into claims made on Facebook that a tram almost derailed at the same point only last week. Dominic Reynolds has more.
When the nation stopped to remember, Croydon was silent for a minute longer. Here, there were 7 more lives to consider, lost just 2 days ago. The family of 57-year-old Philip Seary said he was a gentle giant, a wonderful son, faithful husband and doting father. Dorota Rinkiewicz was a mother of 3 from Poland, and she was full of life, caring and a funny girl, according to a friend. Mark Smith was the father of a young son. His family said he will always stay in our hearts and our minds.
Was always training, was always in great shape. I always used to call him Handsome Mark. He always used to take care of himself, took pride in his appearance, and he would always talk about his family. And it's just, he was such a lovely family man. He was one of the perfect ones, so.
The local MP has been talking to some of the bereaved families, and he told me they're struggling to understand what happened on Wednesday morning.
So I think at this point, the main emotion is just one of grief, trying very hard to come to terms with how it can be that someone you say goodbye to in the morning goes off to work and doesn't come home at the end of the day.
This morning the tram carriages were still in the place beyond the tracks that they came to rest. But today the major operation began to remove them and to reopen this line.
We're told that the carriages are now upright again, but the challenge the recovery operation is facing now is getting those carriages back onto the tracks so that they can be transported here to where a crane can lift them up to be taken away.
But British Transport Police are investigating claims on social media that there was a close call a week beforehand on this very same bend. In a Facebook post dated last Monday, one man said, "I swear the tram lifted onto one side. Everyone is still shaking." The stream of people leaving flowers was steady. On a day we think of those who gave their lives in battle, this community is still stunned that 7 lives were taken on the way to work. Dominic Reynolds, 5 News in Croydon.
Now, police investigating claims by a schoolgirl in Oxford that she was snatched off the street and raped have ruled out that she was abducted. The 14-year-old had told investigators in September that she was taken away and attacked while she was walking to school. Police say the evidence indicates the abduction didn't take place, but they are still looking into allegations of rape. Brexit has left Britain's construction industry at its weakest level for 4 years. New figures show its output dropped dramatically in the 3 months after the referendum. Analysts say it's because the falling value of the pound has sent costs soaring. And a study has found that the Beagle 2 mission to Mars back in 2003 was excruciatingly close to being successful. The probe was thought to have crash-landed on the Martian surface, but analysis indicates the landing went to plan and it may have even worked for several months, but couldn't send the data back to Earth. In the run-up to the election, Donald Trump caused plenty of controversy with his outbursts on social media. And just a day into his new role as president-elect, that same old Donald appears to be back. He took to Twitter to criticise protesters who'd held a second night of demonstrations against his victory. Within hours, though, the displeasure was replaced by, well, diplomacy. Catherine Jones has more.
A second night of street protest in cities across America, from New York to Los Angeles, Philadelphia to Denver. Many demonstrations were peaceful and smaller than the night before.
Moving south on 4th.
Though in Portland, Oregon, the police declared a riot, moved in force and made arrests. Those hoping Donald Trump would now adopt a more statesman-like approach may be disappointed by his response. Just had a very open and successful presidential election, he tweeted. Now professional protesters incited by the media are protesting. Very unfair. Though within hours, an abrupt change of tone. Love the fact that small groups of protesters last night have passion for our great country, he said. We will all come together and be proud.
And this tweet reinforces that while he has shifted, the world around him has shifted, and he is now on the brink of becoming the most powerful person in the world, but he is still the same Donald Trump who gets mad at individual protesters down the street and then tells lies about why they're there.
But Mr. Trump has had a change of heart about the man he once called the worst president, the founder of ISIS, unfit for office.
Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future.
And at the end of their awkward photo call, another compliment.
Very good man. Thank you. Very good man.
In fact, an awful lot of people are having to eat their words. Here's leading Republican Paul Ryan in May.
Look, it's no secret that Donald Trump and I have had our differences.
And now.
Let me just say how excited we are about these opportunities for the country.
Even our own Foreign Secretary is at it. This was him last year.
I think he's betraying a quite stupefying ignorance that makes him, frankly, unfit to hold the office of president.
And yesterday.
I think it's time we snapped out of the general doom and gloom about the result of this election and the collective windjarama that seems to be going on in some places.
Donald Trump has 10 weeks to learn to curb his tendency to lash out at enemies. But despite the supportive comments of politicians at home and abroad, the public anger at his victory is unlikely to go away. Catherine Jones, 5 News.
Still to come on 5 News tonight, the other Trump heading for the White House. What can we expect from Melania when she takes over as First Lady? And
your faith was strong, but you needed proof.
We're remembering and discussing the late, great Leonard Cohen. Those stories and more coming up after this short break. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News Tonight. The singer, songwriter, poet and artist Leonard Cohen has died at the age of 82. The announcement came on his Facebook page, which described him as one of music's most revered and prolific visionaries. Before we talk about his legacy, let's remind ourselves of his most famous work.
It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Hallelujah, one of his most famous songs, of course. Music journalist Andrew Muller is here with me now. And Andrew, he wasn't always a singer-songwriter, was he? He started as a poet and a very well-respected one.
Indeed he did, and it's one of the many oddities of his career in that as a musician, as a singer-songwriter, he actually started quite late. He was in his 30s when his first album came out, which by the standards of even now is ancient, but by the standards of the 1960s or early 1970s, he was regarded as quite middle-aged when he started.
Middle-aged, but he had instant impact. He won a lot of followers, because to say he had fans doesn't feel quite right. He had followers, acolytes, didn't he?
The connection, yeah, did seem with a lot of people who liked his records very, very deep. They became not just things you listen to by way of entertainment, but things that I think it's hard to think of another artist that people would think to the same intensity of being a kind of a thing you grow up with, that these albums are life lessons. Springsteen perhaps has a similar relationship with his fans, but it's a very different kind of writer, obviously.
The one who does spring to mind is David Bowie, I suppose, and apart from obviously the two of them dying this year, he also, Leonard Cohen, has released an album very recently and shortly before his death, we now know.
Yes, he did. In Bowie's case, I think his last album was clearly recorded with the knowledge that he was extremely sick and wasn't going to last much longer. Leonard Cohen, I'm sure, was thinking the same way. I mean, I think once you get into your 80s, you probably have to think like that. But for Leonard Cohen, it's not a massive departure. So much of his work was preoccupied with mortality, with reflecting upon the sort of vast cosmic fluke that is, you know, the human experience, and how to make meaning of it, and basically how to experience it without driving yourself completely insane. I think that was what he was always looking for, was the way to do that.
I feel like we should be, you know, have a bit of liquid refreshment for this conversation, because it's certainly going down that way, the fluke of existence. But he pondered that very deeply, not least when he took himself off for, I think it was 5 years, to live on a Zen Buddhist retreat in California.
He made various sort of departures and retreats to various places at various times. There was, more than most artists, there was a sense of a sort of an eternal quest. He was trying to figure something out, even if he wasn't always altogether sure what it was. And I think the records came across as sort of notes to self on his work in progress. I think quite late in life, I think he quite relaxed into the idea that he actually quite enjoyed being a singer-songwriter who played concerts and made records.
I'm sure, as people have with Bowie, this year people will revisit his records. I certainly will, because I'll be honest, he didn't entirely float my boat. My father-in-law's a huge fan, will be very upset today, so I'm going to have to get involved now that he's passed. Many thanks indeed for coming in, Andrew.
Thank you.
Well, the actor Robert Vaughn has also died.
All right, get out here, everybody. This thing is going to explode.
He was best known for his role as a spy in the TV series The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and was also one of the members of the original Magnificent Seven. He was 83 years old, and according to his manager, he died from acute leukemia with his family by his side. Well, we've heard a lot over the past few days of what kind of president Donald Trump could be when he takes over at the White House. But what about the next First Lady, Melania Trump? During their visit to the White House yesterday, she met the current First Lady, Michelle Obama. This picture was released showing the two of them deep in conversation. We don't know what they discussed exactly, but Donald tweeted that Melania liked Mrs. O a lot. In a moment, we'll discuss what we can expect from Mrs. Trump. But first, Ruth Liptrott's been finding out what we do know about her.
It feels like there's not much we haven't heard about the new President of the United States, but what do we know about the woman who'll be America's 45th First Lady? Well, she was a model from a young age. She was born in Slovenia, which was part of the former Yugoslavia. Her mother was a pattern maker in a textile factory. Her father managed car dealerships. She met Donald in 1998 when she came to the US for work. Despite an age gap of 24 years, they married in 2005 in a star-studded wedding attended by Simon Cowell, P. Diddy and even Bill and Hillary Clinton. A year later, they had their son, Barron, and since then she's been running her own jewellery business. But her big political debut came at the Republican convention, where she made her first speech, which turned out to be uncannily similar to one Michelle Obama made in 2008.
The values that you work hard for what you want in life, that your word is your bond.
You work hard for what you want in life, that your word is your bond, that you do what you say you're going to do.
Then, in the run-up to the election, she was forced to make a statement about her husband being caught on tape making inappropriate comments about women.
Those words, they were offensive to me and they were inappropriate, and he apologized to me.
But just last week, she set out her stall about what kind of First Lady she wanted to be.
We must find better ways to honor and support the basic goodness of our children, especially in social media. It will be one of the main focuses of my work if I'm privileged enough to become your First Lady.
Well, that's exactly what she is now, and no doubt she'll be looking to some of her predecessors for inspiration. She might need a touch of the Eleanor Roosevelt, a politician and activist in her own right. She'll be hoping for a sprinkle of fashion icon Jackie Kennedy, and could learn a lot from Hillary about standing by her man. And she's already shown that she's influenced by Michelle. At least it would have given them something to talk about when she met her at the White House yesterday, with Donald Trump tweeting that Melania liked Mrs. O a lot. O to have been a fly on the wall for that conversation. Ruth Liptrott, 5 News.
I'm joined now by Stephanie Baker from Bloomberg. Stephanie, a very successful First Lady to follow in that Mrs O. Of course, I think of another Mrs O. I think of Jackie Onassis, who, of course, was Jackie Kennedy when she was First Lady. What kind of First Lady do you think Melania is going to be?
Yes, I think she's going to be a very different First Lady from Mrs. Obama or Hillary Clinton, for that matter, both of whom are highly educated, outspoken feminists with law degrees from Ivy League universities. Now, Melania doesn't have a university degree. That was a bit of a controversy this summer when she had claimed to have one. It turned out that was not true. So, you know, many people expect she will return to a very traditional First Lady. She'll be focused on decorating the White House, supporting her husband. You know, she has said that she wants to campaign against cyberbullying, another issue which many people have criticized her for because her husband, Trump, is not known for being polite on Twitter, let's say.
No, he hasn't been particularly diplomatic just in the past 24 hours, as it happens on Twitter. Can she get away with that anymore? Because, as you say, the more recent occupants of the role have been incredible women in Michelle Obama and Hillary Clinton and, you know, Laura Bush. Obviously did more than just, like you say, redecorate the White House.
Well, Laura Bush was quite traditional in many respects. I mean, if you look at the history of First Ladies, many of them, the common thread is that they campaign around health, particularly children's health. Now, Michelle Obama led a campaign against childhood obesity. Hillary Clinton obviously pushed her own healthcare agenda, which got shot down by Congress. But she had pursued, you know, various programs for child health. And I think that's why Melania Trump wants to target cyberbullying. And I think people should give her a chance on that, because I imagine some of that comes from, you know, her raising a 10-year-old son who probably isn't having an easy time of it himself.
And look, she's not having an easy time because, like you say, her education has been called into question. But she speaks several languages. I mean, she's no slouch. She's obviously travelled a lot and she's seen a lot of the world and can communicate with a lot of it as well.
Exactly. I mean, she speaks something like 4 or 5 languages, so that's certainly an asset for visiting foreign dignitaries. You know, when she married Donald Trump in 2005, she was the ultimate sort of trophy wife, right? You know, she had a child a year later and, you know, continued modeling. She started her own skincare and jewelry line. Those have now disappeared from her website, and her website has been taken down. Mm-hmm. So I think she is going to try to reposition herself, but I don't think she is comfortable with a public profile. I think this was not what she got herself into. She wasn't sure what she was getting herself into with this.
Well, she's certainly in it now, isn't she, Stephanie? Or certainly when the new year, when they're inaugurated. Thank you both. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you.
That's just about it from us for now. Chris Page is here with the weather next, and Sangeeta is back with updates throughout the evening here on Channel 5. For now, thanks for your company. Have a good weekend. See you next week. Bye-bye.